Welcome. Today we're at Victoria Embankment. As part of the Thames Embankment, a road and river walk along the north bank of the River Thames. And we're starting our walk at Blackfriars Bridge, so we'll just do a little 360 and then we'll be on our way. The Thames Embankment is a work of 19th century civil engineering that reclaimed marshy land next to the Thames, and we'll have a look how the Thames used to look. Starting in 1862, the Victoria Embankment was primarily designed and engineered by the great man Sir Joseph Bazalgette, one of the great men of London. And I'll put a photo in of the River Fleet entering the River Thames just below Blackfriars Bridge. We mention the River Fleet a lot, so it's just a little nod to this great lost river. And to our left we can capture the work that's been undertaken by the Thames Tideway Tunnel project. This is certainly a massively important project at any time, but it's certainly pertinent now when we're seeing a massive deterioration in water quality throughout the UK, and it's something that we'll be covering over the next few weeks in some of our wild swimming vlogs. After the Great Stink of 1858, Parliament realised the urgency of the problem and resolved to create a modern sewage system. One of the great men of London, Joseph Bazalgette, civil engineer and chief engineer of the Metropolitan Board of Works, was given responsibility for this great task. 6 main interceptor sewers totalling almost 100 miles in length were constructed, incorporating stretches of some of London's lost rivers. Bazalgette was also a colleague of the great Isambard Kingdom Brunel. Need I say more? This major development also allowed new roads, new public gardens and the Circle Line of the London Underground, and was eventually opened on the 13th of July 1870. This project must be up there as one of the great, most significant projects to change the face of London. We're having a look at one of my favourite buildings in London. It's Unilever House. We've seen it in a few previous vlogs. It's a Grade 2 listed building in the neoclassical Art Deco style, and we're just looking at it from a sideways perspective. We've also seen some front-on views earlier in the vlog as well. We're now walking away from Blackfriars Bridge in a westerly direction, and to our right we can see two significant buildings, the former site of Sion College and the former site of the City of London School. The City of London School was founded by a private Act of Parliament in 1834, following a bequest of land 400 years earlier for poor children in the City of London. The original school was established at Milk Street, close to Cheapside, and it moved here to Victoria Embankment in 1879, and subsequently just up the road in Queen Victoria Street, 1986. Nowadays, both these fine buildings are either office blocks or private accommodation. The offices of the investment bank, US investment bank JP Morgan, are very close by, and I believe this sculpture that we see in front of us has something to do with the company. But to be honest, I can't really be bothered to research that any further. US investment banks really don't do it for me. I had the misery of working for a few, so I don't need them reminder. Now in the vlog I called it a vision of London. Now just at this point I think you can do a 360 and you get so many different perspectives on London, so many different buildings, so much a sort of lens into the past. I'm getting into the walk now and I'm realising that a 15-20 minute vlog is going to be completely inadequate today, so I'll definitely come back here. I'm going to miss out so much information. I know that people maybe in the comments will get annoyed that we're not covering everything we could be covering, but you just can't do that in 15-20 minutes. So we'll definitely be coming back for a part 2 and part 3 of Victoria Embankment. We're just passing the very attractive Hamilton House, But surprise, surprise, it's an office block. But an attractive office block at that. We're passing the Middle and Inner Temple. Now, these are Honourable Societies, one of the 4 Inns of Courts, professional association for barristers and judges, and that is a completely different story, another story. There's no way I'm getting into that today. I'd never do it justice, and we will come back, as I said previously, and delve further into this great history, but there's no way you can do it justice. But it gives us a great opportunity to look at these wonderful buildings and some of the great gardens. And I particularly like what I presume was a gatehouse at some stage, at some point in time. This place is just so storied, just so historied. It just is slightly overwhelming at this point in time on the walk. So I think at this point it's just better to look at the great views that we can see before us and just enjoy the vistas. We're now leaving the City of London. We can see the great dragons behind us. And I always think of Victoria Embankment as one of these great conduits between 2 great areas of London, the City of London and the West End of London. I mentioned earlier that we can't really cover all that we would like today, and one of the biggest disappointments that there are so many war memorials here that we'll have to cover another day in another vlog. We certainly won't be able to capture them all today. But we'll do our best, and before us we can see the National Submariners War Memorial. And it commemorates the Royal Navy submariners who died in the First and Second World War. And today we're going to have lots of these natural breaks where we can just do a 360 of the great views that you get from the Victoria Embankment. I particularly like it, as I've mentioned previously, when the tide is up and we have a very full Thames today, and we're just looking over to the Oxo Tower, Sea Containers House and the Bear Building in 1 Blackfriars. We're now reaching the King's Reach Commemoration Memorial for the 25th anniversary of the accession to the throne of George V. Apologies, my camera work at this point was particularly poor, nothing unusual there, so I've dropped in a couple of prints, pictures, to give you a better view of the King's Reach Commemoration Memorial, both from the side that I'm on, the roadside, and also the view that you would get from the river. Hope you enjoy them. Here's another statue, this time of William Edward Forster, who was an English industrialist, philanthropist and Liberal Party statesman. We're going to pass many more statues. I'll try and feature a few, and as I said, I'll come back again and show you even more statues. This is 74. These gardens were created on the reclaimed land, as we mentioned earlier, and the Thames nowadays is considerably narrower than it would have been centuries ago. And now we're coming to one of my, or perhaps my favourite tube station, Temple Station. I love everything about it. Its location in London. I love the Circle Line. I love the signage. I love the Portland stone it's been constructed from. It's magnificent. The station was opened on the 30th of May 1870 with the name of the temple from the temple area in the vicinity of Temple Church, and from the inner temple and the middle temple. We're just taking a sneaky back look to the City of London. That's where I've come from today, and that's where I'm going back to after this walk. Oh crikey, I've made it to Somerset House. Where do I start with this one? Now, this is worthy of a vlog in itself. It's such a storied historic building, but I'll try and give you a few facts, and they are a very few facts, and in no way describes the history of this building, but some might find it useful. Somerset House was designed by Sir William Chambers and began in 1776, with further extensions in 1831 and in the Victorian period 1856. In 1984, the Somerset House Act was passed, legislating the way for Somerset House to be redeveloped as a centre for the arts. And that finishes a very inadequate way of explaining the history of Somerset House. I find this picture particularly interesting. It's the site of Somerset House standing directly on the River Thames, and how it would have looked until the Victoria Embankment was built in the late 1860s. And finally, a look at the inner court of Somerset House. And we're now coming up to the wonderful Waterloo Bridge. I'd like to go into a rendition of the famous Ray Davies song, or give you a recording, but I guess it would be a copyright infringement. And of course another natural break with the 360 to have a look at the great sights that you get from the Victoria Embankment. And one last look at the magnificent Somerset House. We can now see a wonderful sewer cover, and this is my tribute to Sir Joseph Bazalgette, one of the truly great Londoners, who we should all be very thankful to. In the distance we can see the Ministry of Defence building, and in the grounds there are many war memorials, again to be featured in a further vlog. And now we see the pair of obelisks together, named Cleopatra's Needles, that were moved from the ruins of the Caesareum of Alexandria in Egypt in the 19th century. They were presented to the United Kingdom in 1819 by the ruler of Egypt and Sudan, Muhammad Ali, in commemoration of the victories of Lord Nelson at the Battle of the Nile and Sir Ralph Abercrombie at the Battle of Alexandria in 1801. Though the British government admired and respected the present, they for some reason refused to come up with the cost to actually move the needle and the obelisk. And we need to thank Sir William James Erasmus Wilson, who came up with the money for the transport costs. So without him, they may not be here. We're now changing our views away from an easterly direction more over to the west. We're looking at the old GLC building, City Hall, and we're looking at the Houses of Westminster. We're coming to the end of the walk now. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you have enjoyed it as well. As I've explained, we need to come back and do it justice. So hopefully we'll do that at some stage in the future.